Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Arsenal Transfer Time. Now, last season, the transfer window that we had was absolutely incredible. And let's be honest, if we don't sign those players that we did last transfer window, we definitely don't win the Premier League title and you don't get to the Champions League final and all that. Last season, it was a very successful transfer window. It's always successful, especially if you end up winning the Premier League title. It's always successful, however you look at it. Players like Mosquera, considering the players like Saliba and Gabriel and Timber all injured during the season, and Mosquera had to fill in all of those positions. And then you look at players like, Hincapie, because players like Calafiori were injured. Madueke had to come in for Saka many times because Saka was injured. So last transfer window, especially in terms of numbers and depth, it definitely helped us because we had a lot of injuries. Now, this time round, we want to improve on our depth, but we also want to improve on our quality even more. We want to retain the Premier League trophy this season, or next season we want to retain it. And this will be the first time we're going into a season as favourites to win the Premier League. Last season, Liverpool were the favourites to win it. We ended up winning it. And the previous seasons, it was always Man City. So this is the first time we're going into a season with people expecting us to win the Premier League title. We're in a good position. We're stable. Our manager is staying. The other teams are changing managers. And most of our players will be staying. The core of our team, the spine of our team, the likes of Raya, Gabriel, and all those guys, all of them will be staying. But we need to add to that. If you're going to, create a mini dynasty, if you're going to go farther in the Champions League, a step farther in that competition, and farther in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, we need more quality signings. And which of those players are we going to sign? Which positions are we going to look at this season? So, first question for you guys, comment down below. Which position do you think is the most important to improve this season? Which is the one position? Last season, everyone was saying striker. What about this time? Is it still striker for you? Do you want a left winger? Do you want a right winger? Do you want an extra midfielder? Do you think an extra defender, maybe a right back? Which position do you think we need the most? Now, this is what let's cover everything that has gone on this week. And let's start with what David Ornstein reported earlier this week. So, Arsenal are enjoying a strong financial position this summer, and it can even exceed last year's transfer budget without any problems. Arsenal are looking to sign a second striker, a left winger, a 6 or an 8 midfielder, or a player who can play both, and a right back. Now, last season, as I've said, we all wanted to get a striker. We ended up getting a striker. We ended up getting a centre back who could play as a left back. We ended up getting a centre back who could also play as a right back. We got another midfielder. And as I'm recording this, Gyökeres just scored a free kick. That is crazy. As I'm recording this, Victor Gyökeres has just scored a free kick for Sweden. Speaking of him as well, we signed a striker. Victor Gyökeres has just scored a free kick for Sweden. We've signed Eze, a 10 who could play as a left wing as well. Like, we signed a lot of different positions, a lot of different profiles. Now, this time, we know that players like Jesus will be leaving. Maybe a Ben White will be leaving. So you're going to need backups, and you're also going to need players who are potentially going to be starting. Again, last transfer window, we signed players who are coming to start for us. Players like Gyökeres and players like Hincapie and all that. Those players are coming to start for us. The likes of Madueke and Kepa are coming to be backups. So how many players are we going to sign this time that are going to go straight into the starting lineup? How many players are we going to sign just as backups? So we want a second striker. I'm assuming that will be a backup for Gyökeres, maybe 50-50, just like the way Havertz and Gyökeres have been rotating at the end of last season. A left winger is definitely a position we really need. We've been talking about a left winger for 3 seasons now. Ever since we were linked to Nico Williams, we've been linked to Rodrigo, we've been linked to Leao, we've been linked to Mitoma. So many different players we've been linked to in terms of the left winger, but we never really sorted it out. Even Mudryk, like 3 years ago, we wanted Mudryk. We ended up getting Trossard. And since we haven't really signed a left wing, I've been signing other players who could play there, like an Eze, but we've never really signed an out-and-out left wing. It's been Martinelli and Trossard the last 3 seasons. A 6 on 8 for the midfielder. Now, it depends on what our plan is for next season. Are we going to go for it in majority of the games? Are we planning to, keep Lewis Kelly in midfield? Are we planning to keep Declan Rice as the 6? Are we planning to play Eze more on the left or more in the Odegaard position? Are we planning to play Eze and Odegaard together more next season? like it really depends on what Arteta is planning and what Andrea Bat is planning. All that comes into consideration to know which players are going to sign. Is Nogat going to stay? Where will Merino play next season? Is he going to be more of an 8 or more of a backup 9? All that needs to be taken into consideration. And also right back. Now, Timber's had injury issues. The fact that we want a right back kind of looks like you're going to let go of Ben White, but again, you never know. Saliba might undergo a back surgery. We don't know how long that will going to keep him out for. So could we have a situation where Mosquera is starting at centre back? Could we have a situation where Timber will be starting at centre back next season? Again, all that needs to be taken into consideration. So those 4 positions are the positions we're looking at, and I would agree with that. I think the other positions we're okay in terms of like centre backs. In terms of left backs, we have 2 expectors to make the Hincapi will be bought permanently, and then in terms of midfield, again, we have Rice, we have Zubimendi and all those guys. So I don't think we're going to, again, depends on the plan, but I don't think you're going to make like 8 signings like we did this past transfer window. So those are the 4 we're looking at according to David Ornstein. Now, let's break down which players before that, let's look at Fabrizio's update. Fabrizio said Arsenal have already started working and planning for summer signings. At least 3 signings are expected, could be even more based on exits. Top winger the priority, midfielder and right back also almost guaranteed. Striker situation to follow. So he says he agrees that top winger is our priority, and then midfield and right back, and then he says striker could be the last one that we go for. Now, we've been linked to players like Alvarez, but a player like Alvarez will be very, very expensive. So we've gotten to the Champions League final. We've won the league, so we're going to get a lot of money in terms of that. Last season, we spent like 250 million, and almost all the players we were signing were that kind of price. Gyökeres 60 million, Madueke 50, Zubimendi 50, Eze around 60. Like all of the players that we signed last season, 4 of them were more than 50 million. So could we see the same scenario? Because we've been linked to players like Rogers. Those players are not going to cost 20 million. No, they're definitely not going to cost 20 million. It's going to be a lot of money. So knowing that those are the positions we want, but which players are we being linked to from those positions? So let's start with this one from Sami Mokbel, reported a couple of days ago. Arsenal hold genuine interest in Aston Villa forward Morgan Rogers. Internal talks over how attacker would fit in the squad given existing number 10 options. Sources not ruling out a bid, plus progress made on move for Leicester team Jeremy Monga. You're going to talk about Monga in the next video, but let's focus on Rogers as well as Kroupi in this video. Now, Morgan Rogers is a player that I absolutely love. Like I was tweeting about him in 2024 when he joined Aston Villa. He joined Aston Villa in the middle of 3 seasons ago, and then he's been at Aston Villa for 2 full seasons now. And in those 2 full seasons, something that people would ignore because people will be focusing at the numbers and all that, his durability. He plays a lot of games for Aston Villa. Whenever Aston Villa rest players in the Europa League, or rest players in the Champions League, or rest players in the FA Cup, Rogers always plays. These 2 seasons, these 2 past full seasons for him at Aston Villa, he's played 37 games each time. So he's only really missed 2 games in the league in both in those seasons, 1 last season and 1 the previous season. He always plays. His minutes always high. He rarely gets subbed off, so his durability is really good. But also his numbers are absolutely fantastic. He scored 14 goals in both of those seasons, and last season he had 12 assists, and the previous season he had 16 assists. That is crazy. That is 30 goal returns and 26 goal returns, so 56 goal returns in 2 seasons. Let me see if I can do that mathematics quickly. That's 28 goals, and that's 28 goals, right? Yeah, 14, 28 goals, and then he had 16 and 12 assists. So those are incredible numbers. That is almost 30 goals and almost 30 assists in 2 seasons. So the numbers are really, really good. He would add to our numbers. Now, where would he play for us? He's very good in terms of he can play, obviously. He's just like Eze. He can play as a 10, the 8, or the left wing. Now, some people have been saying we don't need to sign Morgan Rogers. We already have Eze. I don't agree with that. As we've seen last season, there's going to be games where, you're going to need a certain player. The game against West Ham, we needed Odegaard to open up that West Ham defense. It worked for us. But a game like PSG, we saw Odegaard struggled. Now, the kind of game we were playing, the kind of tactics we had for that game in terms of defending and transitioning and countering, Odegaard is not the best player for that. But if you have Morgan Rogers in that game against PSG, transitioning quick passes and, carrying the ball from a midfield position to the forward areas, he would do that incredibly well for us. He would have been the perfect player to have in that game. Against West Ham, you need a player like an Odegaard, and then there's some games like Newcastle, as they would do the job for you. So you need all of these players. As you've seen, if you're going to compete in all of those fronts, you're going to need every single player. You can't say, okay, we're not going to sign Morgan Rogers because we have Odegaard and Eze. No, you're going to need all of those players for different occasions. You're going to play two of them in one game. There's even some games where you're going to play three of them, depending if Rogers is going to start on the left wing and then you have Eze and Odegaard, all of them. You're going to need every single attacker. His ball striking ability is absolutely incredible as well. There's a goal he scored against West Ham for Aston Villa. There's a goal he scored against Liverpool at the end of last season as well. Incredible strikes. In terms of knowing where the goal is, in terms of knowing how to, finish, his numbers are really good. And compared to our players, it's night and day. Now, even if he comes to Arsenal, he won't be playing every single day. Like those games I've told you, he played like more than 50 games in both seasons for Aston Villa and 37 in the league in both seasons. He's probably not going to play 37 games for Arsenal in a season, He's going to be rotated, other players are going to play. But I'm sure even if he plays 20 of those games, he'd return more than what we have. Martinelli only scored one Premier League goal last season. That is too low. Luckily, we ended up winning the Premier League that season. And the previous season, I think Martinelli and Jesus only had like 4 or 5 goals, maybe even less. In the 23-24 season, I said if Martinelli and Jesus scored even 5 more goals, we'd have won the league that season. The only player who keeps on returning every single season is Trossard and Saka. Last season he was injured, but they always try to get double figures in terms of goals and assists. But, Odegaard 1 goal last season in the league, Martinelli 1 goal in the league. Madueke, I think he scored a total of 4 goals or something. Those numbers are too low. You need a player who's going to score a lot, because even in terms of assists, Martinelli and Jesus and Madueke, they don't really have enough assists. Odegaard as well doesn't have enough assists. Actually, I think I can even check, how many assists do these guys have from last season. Let me even check Odegaard. That the numbers are not enough, and this guy's gotten you 16 and 12 Morgan Rogers in those 2 seasons. So you need a player who's going to be good in terms of numbers, a player who's going to, almost match Trossard and Saka's numbers. And if you're going to replace Trossard, if he's going to leave, you need someone to, cover for those goals. Because I'm imagining if you don't have Trossard last season, we probably don't win the league. That's how important he is in terms of those numbers. So last season, Odegaard had 8 assists, 7 in the league. So 8 is not bad considering he wasn't even playing that much, but you still need more, You need double figures from a player like Odegaard if you're going to, keep on competing and retain the Premier League title. You're going to need those returns. So Morgan Rogers is the player we're looking at. We're definitely going to speak more about him. And in terms of the article from Sami Mokbel, he goes on to talk about how Arsenal, want to spend more, but because we're going to pay bonuses to players for winning the Premier League title and all that, we might need to sell, and then we might need to be careful with the finances. But Aston said you're in a very good position financially because of the money that you're getting in the Champions League and all that. So we're looking at Rogers, we're looking at Kroupi, we're looking at Julian Alvarez. Rogers and Kroupi are going to both cost around 80 million. Alvarez is going to cost around 120 million. So however way you look at it, it's still going to be very expensive. So the position that we need the most is left winger. If we sign Rogers, does it mean you're not going to sign a left winger, or are we going to go for both Rogers and a left winger? I think that is what you're supposed to do. That is what I would personally do. So if we move for those players, it is also expected that Jesus or Martinelli or Trossard might end up leaving, at least 2 of them. Again, we also have players like Nwaneri in the team. Reece Nelson is back. What is going to happen to him? And according to multiple outlets, Rogers is open to joining Arsenal, according to Sami Mokbel. He's open to joining us, which is great. Usually the past 3 seasons, whenever we're linked to a player, whenever we're close to signing a player, we start hearing about it well before. Like Declan Rice, we started hearing about him in April. A player like Merino, we started hearing about him when he was playing at the Euros. Last season, we started hearing about, Eze in April, and then it looked like he was going to go to Tottenham, but we ended up signing him. We started hearing about Gyökeres in April. So whenever Arsenal, you start hearing reports from Sammy Mockbell and David Ornstein and a couple of others, this definitely has legs to it. We're definitely going to go for Morgan Roger. If he's open to joining us, that would be great. That definitely helps. And then Goldberg, whose Chelsea report, he says Morgan Rogers' priority is Arsenal, because he's also been linked to Chelsea and all that. But he says his priority is Arsenal, which is great. We'll definitely discuss him more. Fabrizio says Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, and Manchester City have all called recently to be found on Kroupi. Now, Rogers, if we definitely want him, I'd expect him to join us. But the one for Kroupi is a bit 30% in our favor, 70% in other teams' favors. Because he's French, I feel like you'd want to go to PSG. Because he's quite young and that price, he's only had one season at Bournemouth. Are Arsenal willing to splash 80 million for Kroupi? I don't know. I think PSG is the kind of team that would sign a player like this. It would be great to add a player like this. I think he scored against us at the Emirates, right? Like, he was very good. He was very, very good last season for his age. I think he was on loan the previous season. He came last season and his numbers were absolutely incredible. And the way him and players like Scott and players like Ryan, they led Bournemouth to that finish. Bournemouth did not lose for half of the season. I think their last loss was in January. That is incredible. And it's because of players like Kroupi, He's quite young. So again, it depends on what we're looking for. Are we looking for a starting striker next season? Is Gyökeres going to still be a starter? All that depends. So we're definitely looking at Rogers. We're looking at Kroupi. We're going to discuss them more in other videos. And we're also looking at Fernandes. Mateus Fernandes is the player that we're looking at from West Ham, the player who missed that big chance against us when he played West Ham. Maybe he knew he was going to join Arsenal. According to reports from Sammy Mockbell, he says Arsenal have discussed the merits of a move for Mateus Fernandes, who is expected to leave West Ham following their relegation. However, Miles Lewis-Kelly's emergence in his preferred central midfield position may hasten a change in approach. Again, all depends on what you're going to do next season. If Lewis Kelly is going to be a midfielder next season, and we already have Rice and Zubimendi as the sixes, we have Merino to come in for Lewis Kelly. We have maybe in some games Havertz to come in for Lewis Kelly. Maybe, it depends on if Nogard is going to stay. Doesn't look likely. If Rogers comes in, is both Ez and Rogers going to fit in as eights as well? All that depends. But Mateus Fernandes is another player who's been linked to other teams as well. So very, very interested to see how we're going to do it. And he's another player who's going to cost more than 60 million. His team has been relegated, so maybe it'll be a little bit cheaper. But let's see what happens. But that is the latest. That's the first video update in terms of what we're trying to do this transfer window. 4 positions in a striker, left winger, midfield, and right back. So far, Rogers, Kroupi, and Fernandes. There's other targets like Tonali and Monga that you're looking at from Leicester. We're going to talk about them in different videos. But let me know, which position do you think is your priority to sign or to improve on this transfer window? Thank you for watching, and I'll catch up with you guys on the next one.